Today is Friday, August 28th, and for the first time in nearly 6 months, we got football back. We got a full week 0 college football betting breakdown here, and I am no college football expert by any stretch of the imagination. So I am being happy to join with a college football expert, 30,000 followers on TikTok. I'd like to introduce you to the newest capper in the Wizcord, Tegan Randolph. Tegan, tell the world about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Wiz. And hi, everyone. I'm sure you've seen me, whether it's on TikTok, YouTube, on TGR Football. It's all things college football for me. I've been a college football fan since I was like 12 years old, and that passion with the sport has only grown. I've been doing content and diving into college football for about 8+ years, and honored to have the opportunity to talk with you guys and make some money along the way. As college football, I think there's a ton of opportunity, and only the sharpest and the best of the best can be profitable for an entire season. I believe we're going to do some great things here this season.
I'm excited as well. We're a little bit different. I'm a Big Ten guy. I'm a big Wisconsin guy. Can you tell the people who you root for and kind of the conferences that you keep an eye on the most?
Oh, yeah. I am a Southern guy through and through, born and raised in the state of Texas, where football truly is a religion. I don't think that's just a joke anymore. It's truly different. The high schools are the size of colleges, but I grew up a Texas A&M fan, going to College Station. I followed the SEC pretty religiously. I do believe I'll give the Big Ten credit. They've been better for the past couple of years. We know who's the best of the best for the long run. But yeah, I am the South through and through, and love college football because of it.
Yeah, so Tegan will be only covering college football. That'll be his main thing. We'll be doing a couple official plays, not only in the Discord, but in these YouTube videos as well. And I'm excited to talk about just week 0. Can you kind of go in depth about this little appetizer that we get, why it's called week 0, and why some teams play this week but not others?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes into some of the scheduling of the broader season. In some cases, when you play a week 0 game, you get an additional bye week. I think of Hawai'i and Stanford. That's a huge reason why they tend to play in week 0 is you'll, instead of getting one bye week throughout the season, you get an additional one. And like you said, Wiz, it is an appetizer. And I think any slate, especially as we have been so desperate for actual football. Personally, I'm not in the camp that watches NFL preseason, so we get games that actually matter. And it's a good opportunity to expand the sport before the NFL ball really gets going. We'll talk about North Carolina and TCU. That's in Dublin, Ireland. So we get a little bit of that international appeal as well. So really excited for this week 0 slate because I'm of the belief any slate is a good slate to me.
Well, let's talk about that Ireland game. Something you don't see much in college football, an international game. It is TCU versus North Carolina. One of the only Power 5 marquee matchups in this slate. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, a couple of different things here. And I mean, if you watch Wiz's MLB videos, I think the first thing we have to start with is weather. Weather is a huge factor here. And I think in college football, you always have to account for that. And more than ever, when we talk about Dublin, Ireland, part of this read and going into why I am of the belief that there's a total play here is because number one, week 0 games are very sloppy to begin with. They're starting a week early. A lot of times you're breaking in new offenses, new coaching, a lot of new things. But when you pair that with Dublin, Ireland being an outdoor stadium in which there's an expectation of rain already, we played this weeks ago because of the weather becoming a huge factor, and that is becoming true as we are expected to see cloudy, rain, very ugly weather. There could even be a delay in this. We saw that last year with Iowa State versus Kansas State. And so that's why I'm looking at the under on the total here. Now, this has become a community play which I expected it to be because we're looking at two different offenses breaking in, two new coordinators and two new quarterbacks. On one side with TCU, you have quarterback Jaden Craig coming out of Harvard. I would argue he is the best Harvard quarterback we've seen since Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I do think he'll have a good season at some point, but I'm not expecting a Harvard transfer going into the Power Four to go up against a year two Bill Belichick defense to have a great game on the first game of the season across international waters. And we could talk about North Carolina on the other side, who is going to be breaking in Bobby Petrino. And if you're a fan of college football, this is a crazy world we live in where Bill Belichick and Bobby Petrino are on the same staff. They're going to be breaking in veteran quarterback Billy Edwards. And while I think that there's room for opportunity that they're going to have a solid game offensively, it may not have the option to go through the passing game because of the weather. We've seen this line move a ton. I would play it up to about 48.5 with some different odds. But as it currently stands, we're looking at a 46.5. If you were in the Discord, we locked this in at 49.5 at minus 110. And I think this game is going to be really ugly. I do like a side here, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the line has moved a little bit. It's down to 47, 46.5. Now, the good thing about football is that you can play every total just at a different price. If people still wanted to get 49.5, what would you play that up to?
I would try to play that around 150 and do it for your unit to win 0.75. We've done that before with some really juiced lines. I do think 46.5, you're playing a little bit with fire as we get to that. 47.5 is a very key number, especially with total betting. So I'm more than comfortable taking a juiced line, but I will always say this with week 0, and we see this across all the different leagues, is just be very careful with your unit management. A lot of these reads are based on things that we are hypothesizing going into a season. So myself included, I'm being very careful with my units and not overplaying a week 0 line because there's so much volatility that can change. But I absolutely believe in this read just because there's a lot of different factors baking into a really sloppy game, which we've historically seen with more even matchups.
So this had the same thing in NFL as well. As we get to week 0, week 1, week 2, we're still discovering who these teams are. And for some college teams, we won't know until week 4 or 5 once we get into conference play. When it comes to betting your strategy for college football, do you tend to do less volume for the same units? Or do you lower your units sometimes based on confidence?
For me, I try to keep it around 2 to 3 plays that I really do like. If there is a line like we've talked about where I will take on some juice, that's completely fine for me to keep the unit size. But in some cases, I will lower it, especially if I want to do a multi-leg parlay. I know that's a very common thing in college football, but I always warn people around that because with so much volatility in the sport, there's all it takes is one crazy upset, which we see all the time, to bust a parlay. That's why I try to keep it as many straights and around a 2 to 3 really confident plays from me.
Well, let's talk about your second play. Your first play was North Carolina TCU under 49.5. You kind of teased it a little bit that you do like a side in this game. Let's start there. If you you could also do this where if you wanted to take an alt total of either 49.5 or even go up to like 52.5 on the under, what could you pair here?
Yeah, and I absolutely believe in TCU to win this football game. That's the side that I like, truly for a couple of different reasons. I think this is a more established program. I think the coaching at the collegiate level, I understand a lot of people are going to see the pedigree of a Bill Belichick and Bobby Petrino and ask themselves the question, there's no way that they could have another bad season. But college football to the NFL is just such a completely different animal. And let's not forget, Sonny Dykes within this decade has gotten a team to a national championship. We can forget about the result because it was as ugly as it was. But TCU by far is the more established program, and I think they're going to be more prepared to go across waters and put themselves in the best position to win. Originally, we saw this line around 6.5, 7.5, and now we're seeing it around 8.5, and it's going to more than likely move to potentially 9.5, as a lot of people are on the side of TCU. But I'm in the camp, just take the winner, especially as the total gets lower. I'm not a fan of the lower total, big spread type of games because I think the margin for error is so much more thin. And when we look at this, I think TCU finds a way to win because they're going to make enough plays, especially at the line of scrimmage, that they will have an advantage on. And I would be more than comfortable taking a pair here where you take a more juiced line of that 52.5 total, pair it with TCU, or we will also talk about another money line pair that I think would be a great play to have as one of our officials.
Yeah, so we talked about that. Let's lead into it now. We like TCU money line, but obviously juice, so we need to pair it with another money line that we think is an absolute smash. We're moving to Las Vegas, baby. UNLV versus Memphis. Which side do you like here for the official play?
Absolutely. This is arguably my favorite game on the slate, and there's some other Power Four matchups, but we have college football playoff implications in week 0, which frankly you don't see often in this slate. UNLV is going to be hosting Memphis, and it's a tale of very different tapes. On one side with Memphis, they're breaking in a ton of new. We're looking at a new head coach, new offensive system, basically 11 new starters on the offensive side of the ball and 10 of 11 new starters on the defensive side of the ball. And the question really does become, how quickly can Memphis put it all together in the first week versus an established group of 6 power in UNLV with Dan Mullen and Jackson Arnold breaking in as the new quarterback? Now, I understand what you're going to see a lot within the community is, do you want to back Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji because they did say they were going to play 2 quarterbacks with Arnold starting? But when you come to the realization that UNLV had a fantastic year last year and they played 2 quarterbacks as well with now Nebraska quarterback Anthony Colandry and Alex Orji, this is a system that they've already ran before. The reason why I lean UNLV money line, and that's what we're going to pair with TCU money line, is because I am of the belief that Jaden Thomas, the running back from UNLV, is going to be the key factor within this game and is going to keep the football out of Jackson Arnold's hand. And that's what's going to put them in the best position to win this football game. I'm a big proponent of whoever can win the trenches is more of the times than not going to win the football game. And when I look at a front 7 that is a bunch of transfers and you're going to ask them to go against a prolific rushing attack paired with a good enough defense for UNLV, I side with UNLV on this side. I know Memphis has become a trendy upset pick. The line has moved a little bit in their favor, but I'm sticking to my guns here. I believe the more established program, especially in week 0, is going to be more set up to find a way to win a football game. By all means, Memphis more than likely is going to be played as I think they're going to be a good team down the road, but to expect them in week 0 to get all things put together, I think is too far of a stretch. I believe UNLV is going to win this football game.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense as well. I like the price you're getting on this. It's still minus 106 on DraftKings. I will say that I'll ask you this. Regardless of who wins this football game, if you had to pick one team to be in the college football playoff that you think is going to be Memphis or UNLV?
That is a great question. I would lean UNLV because they have the proven pedigree of it. I do think that there is the upside of making a college football playoff run from Memphis. By all means, I'm respecting them as a program. Charles Huff is a proven commodity at the group of 6 level, but it's a lot to ask, and they definitely have the upside. They have one of the best defenders in Jamon Tapp coming off the edge, and by all means, you're going to see him make impact plays. But when I see a rushing offense that can travel and be able to play at a high level, and I think there's room for optimism on the defensive side of the ball for UNLV, I think this team is going to be well equipped to stay in enough games with more proven commodities that I would have them in the college football playoff over a team like Memphis.
Well, we're going to see a lot of Memphis and UNLV this season, especially probably on primetime games as we go throughout the season. This might be the only time all season Jacksonville State and North Dakota State actually get some love. This is going to be another one of those big time games, in our opinion at least. Why should people tune into this game today or tomorrow?
Absolutely. And I think there's good reasons to, if you're a college football sicko, or maybe you want to understand or broaden your horizon on the sport. North Dakota State, if you follow the FCS, they have been the Alabama of the FCS, winning many national titles. And I think the last time people watched North Dakota State football was when they faced off against Deion Sanders in Colorado and gave them some issues. But what I'm looking at here in the matchup with Jacksonville State is a program that I think is being mispriced. I see these two programs as more of an even matchup, as Jacksonville State is a projected 7.5 win total. And that's even losing with their star running back Cam Cook, who went to West Virginia. When we look at Jacksonville State, I look at a program that isn't losing much outside of that, and they're going to be well set up to have a more even matchup with North Dakota State. To call a spade here, North Dakota State is being priced like one of the best group of six programs in the entire country. And while I think that their play style is going to have them be competitive in a ton of games, and that play style being a hard-nosed, physical, run the football type of mindset, that's what won them so many games in the other levels of competition. I think Jacksonville State is going to be well equipped to be able to slow things down, be able to run the football in their own right. And with how their defense is set up in a 3-3-5, I think they could put North Dakota State in some uncomfortable situations. We're talking 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10s. These are situations that North Dakota State doesn't feel comfortable in. And truly, when I see a 7.5 line that is very much playable as it currently stands, I believe on FanDuel, it's minus 130, the same could be said for DraftKings. I think this stays within a touchdown. North Dakota State doesn't have the type of offense that is going to pull away from games. They're going to keep the ball in play. That's going to have the clock continue to tick. They're going to have limited possessions. And so when I see over a touchdown line that's absolutely playable with a Jacksonville State roster that I think is comparable to a North Dakota State, I'm absolutely taking the points for the value alone.
Let's talk about like betting theory when it comes to spreads as well. People who are accustomed to NFL know this. Why is plus 7.5 infinitely better than plus 6.5?
Well, there's a couple of different reasons you can bake into it, but I think the main one is just you have a touchdown spread to work with. If you lose by a touchdown, you're getting hooked with the 6.5. And there's key lines with spreads and totals of common football results. By all means, there's worlds where a 2-point conversion and an 8-point win can happen, but more times than not, you're going to see a 7.5 line have a little bit more favorable odds or less favorable odds than a 6.5, because the books understand that a 7-point gap is more comfortable or a more common result. So you get more favorable odds on it. Does it make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. And I've used that strategy in the NFL for years now. I especially love taking all plus 2.5, all plus 3.5 lines over 2.5, because there's so many times at the end of a game where a field goal decides it entirely, or overtime especially is decided by a field goal as well. So that 3 and that 7-point mark are so important, especially if you're targeting lower spread games. Now in college football, sometimes we're going to get to 60, 70 total points at times. We'll talk about some of them later on. But just being important, even if this line does somehow go down to minus 6.5 for North Dakota State, try to get on the plus 7 or plus 7.5 side for Jacksonville State. I think our recommendations like minus 135. If it gets anything above that, maybe look somewhere else or find a dejuicer.
Absolutely agree with that. And I think a good analogy, if there's someone that has been betting baseball, is the spread of the 1.5. More times than not, baseball games end with one. More times than not, a touchdown is the gap between a similar score. And so that's why that 7.5 can be so crucial. Just thought of that analogy.
No, it's a good one for sure. We're going to go through our plays one more time. So at the beginning, we had North Carolina and TCU under 49.5 total points, minus 110 on DraftKings. We play this down to like 47.5, but if you can get the 49.5 for anything under like minus 150, we'd pay the price up to there. Then we got TCU and UNLV moneyline pair, minus 106 on DraftKings for 1.06 units. Don't overthink this. UNLV's got this over Memphis. And then our third play is Jacksonville State, the plus 7.5 spread. Make sure you get that plus 7.5. Any notes you want to make on any of these plays, or do you want to move on to the other games?
No, we can move on. I'm just excited football's back.
I'm excited as well. All right, a a Power Five team, because I don't know why they're playing, but they get to play against San Jose State. You know what's funny about this game? All sports books have pulled money line on USC. You cannot bet their money line anymore. Can you kind of talk about why this game is happening and why USC is just such a major favorite?
Yeah, this is a tale as old as time in college football where a bigger brand goes and faces off against a group of six opponent that obviously outclasses them. It's what we call a cupcake game. And you may ask, why are we even betting? Why are we even looking at a cupcake game? Well, I think there is value in how a team blows out another one. Because if you only bet NFL and you see a minus 38.5 spread, well, something's clearly wrong because you will never see that in your life. And we're looking at a USC team facing off against San Jose State, and it's a 38.5 spread. Part of the reason why this matchup happens is USC pays San Jose State to play them, and it happens all across the sport. Where we look for value here is what kind of teams actually extend the score and will put the pedal to the metal in terms of their offensive production. I think a team that doesn't do it, and I always warn people around this team, and I think a lot of the Sharps have already talked about this before, is Georgia. They'll have a crazy spread line and they won't end up covering it because Kirby Smart has talked about in his press conferences. Yeah, I respect the opponent across the side of the field too much. We're not going to extend our lead for the sake of doing so. Lincoln Riley and USC, not so much the case. And that's why I think when we look at this, I'm not officially playing any lines here. I do lean the 38.5 line. But if you could get a playable 47.5 team total, I really like that play. I do think the odds have kind of reached to unplayable territory. If you wanted to do a half unit on them to score over 50 points, I'm completely comfortable with that because we've seen the history of USC putting up 50 plus points consistently against these lower level opponents, as Lincoln Riley with a veteran quarterback in Jaden Myalva has a very young supporting cast, and they want to get the ball rolling as quickly as possible.
When we're going to see a lot of these this season, especially before we get to week 4 and week 5, these insane spreads. Is there value in first half props on either side sometimes, and when would you target that?
Absolutely. I think that there's complete value in first half props, especially the totals. I looked at, for example, North Carolina and TCU for a long time was 24.5. I leaned the under for a little bit. I believe that line has moved since then. But the way that you look at it is how many reps with these larger games, to go back to like USC and San Jose State, how many snaps and drives can I get with the first team? Because in most of these cases, they will be blowing out a team by 38 or so points by the first half, and they're going to put their backups in and let the gas out a little bit. They're not going to have as much pressure to score. So when you're looking at a first half total, you ask yourself, how many reps or how many snaps can I get within that first half? And a lot of times I wait until we get to about week 2 to see pace, because I think with some of the timing changes that have happened within college football, we've seen less and less possession. So I want to see, can I get X amount of possessions and see the efficiency for that team to trust a over total or even an over first half team total. I do think there's some value there once we get a little bit more data.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I'm excited to see betting Georgia. There might be some value on those first round lines for sure. I know Wisconsin ain't going to be favored by 30 points anytime soon. But let's move into a game that's actually a little.
They get North.
Go ahead.
They're good. Oh, I was just gonna say they get Notre Dame week 1, so definitely not gonna be favored in anything.
They'll probably be unfavored. They'll be underdogs by 30 points against Notre Dame. I'm not excited for Wisconsin this year whatsoever. But let's move into a game that's a little bit more interesting. Primetime matchup: NC State versus Virginia. We're seeing the line at about -4 right now. It's between that -3.5, around that price. Over under in this game is 51.5. So one of the lower ones we'll see. Obviously, nothing compares to what North Carolina and TCU is going to be. But what are you feeling about this matchup?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really popular game for many different reasons. I think if you asked an average college football fan looking at the slate, they're going to say that this is the best game on there because Virginia was competing for an ACC title last year. NC State has a popular quarterback named CJ Bailey, who's gotten a ton of hype this offseason. And I think he's a really dynamic player. There's a couple different reasons or red flags that I'm avoiding with this game. And I do have a lean, but it's a very much a soft lean at the end of the day. And it's because, A, with Virginia, they're breaking in a ton of new, especially at the quarterback position, but they have continuity in the coaching staff. And what's really enticing about Virginia is they are going down the path that we saw with Indiana of taking these 4, 5, even 7-year seniors and placing them in the trenches, these players that have a ton of veteran experience that is going to have them control the football, be able to run effectively. I love their running backs. And Bo Perbula, their quarterback, former Penn State / Missouri quarterback, he's been known to use his legs and in these lower level matchups playing pretty good. And I think Virginia is going to be able to control the football. I lean their -4.5, but like we talked about earlier, that's a type of line that could hook you. I would prefer a 3.5, even a 2.5 if it's playable. But then again, I'm avoiding it as well as we saw an injury report list 12 guys for Virginia football on their injury report coming out of fall camp. That's a red flag in its own right. And then when we look at the other side of the ball with NC State, there is a flamethrower at the quarterback position with a ton of continuity in a guy like CJ Bailey. And I will see a ton of +4.5 for NC State. And I think there's valid reason behind it. And when I see both sides and there's a ton of ambiguity, this is one of those games that, in my opinion, just enjoy the football in front of you. I think the lines are very much exactly where I would price them at. And if I were you, I would avoid this game and just enjoy the good football in front of you.
We're not going to get a lot of that this weekend for sure. While I do think TCU and North Carolina will be close, I think it's going to be very ugly. This could be one of the more, how do you say that? More like mid-season games of the slate. You're going to see a lot of sloppy football from a lot of teams since it's week 0. But I do think there is a lot on the line here between NC State and Virginia. This will be like one of 3 games I need to watch Saturday. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. This has conference title implications. NC State has a very light schedule. Their head coach is on the hot seat, so there's urgency there. That's another reason why I'm being a little bit more cautious with that program. Offensively, they could put up 40 points any given night. They beat Virginia last year, and then Virginia is expected to have some sort of regression, but they are one of the oldest rosters, I believe, in the country. They are the oldest in the ACC, and we've seen that trend work out for a ton of different programs. This is going to be a very competitive matchup with one really good quarterback versus a good overall roster. You see that all the time in this sport. I'm really excited for this game, but I'm personally not putting any money on it.
Let's move on to the last game that we're going to discuss today. Another interesting matchup, not on ESPN. We're getting this on the ACC network. We're getting Hawaii versus Stanford. Stanford's currently only, in my opinion, which is shocking, a -4 favorite here against Hawaii. Hawaii is usually slightly worse on the road. Can you talk about why Stanford's only at -4 here?
Yeah, and I think Hawaii is going to be a community play for a lot of people because the way that I always use the analogy of is what could be sold on a college football preview magazine? Well, Hawaii's got the prolific offense coming off of, I believe, a 9-win season. They have the returning quarterback in Michael Hedro, who is fantastic. And there's a lot of easy sells for Hawaii. But then you look at the line and you ask, well, why is it 4.5? I'm getting 4.5 free points. I may even sprinkle the money line with Hawaii. But you put it into the perspective that the last year's matchup, Stanford had been dominating for about 3.5 quarters, just comfortably the more physical team, the team that looks like a Power 4 program, and consistently found ways to lose. Now, I use that now or that terminology very lightly, but if you watch that football game, it was self-inflicted wounds that gave Hawaii a chance to win to, I believe, by just a field goal. And as we look at this matchup, Stanford's going to be at home in a program that is just looking for any kind of life to it. This is going to be one of their few opportunities in the regular season that they're going to be able to win games. I understand they got Davis Warren at quarterback. The last time you probably watched Davis Warren, he was throwing interceptions. At Michigan, he's coming off of a torn ACL. But that's not why I would lean Stanford to cover the 4.5. And it's mainly rooted in the fact that I think they're going to be able to control the football and keep that Hawaii offense off the field. They were able to run the football last time. I think they're going to be able to run the football now. And we throw in the fact that in this run and shoot offense that Hawaii has been known to run, a loss of a wide receiver is virtually the same type of loss of a starting halfback. And they lost their top pass catcher, who is questionable to play in this game. I would not expect him to play. And even if he did, he is not going to be 100%. I really do think that the depth and the lack of physicality that Hawaii is going to bring on the road is a lot to ask out of a program. And I think Stanford is going to be more equipped to be able to cover this spread. But then again, it is a lean for me because I could definitely see a world where the Hawaii offense, with a lot of returning production, is going to be able to put up points, and maybe a guy like Davis Warren's not able to catch up. That's why I'm just going to enjoy the game, because these are two competitive teams, one of the worst Power 4 programs versus a solid Group of 6 team, and just enjoy the good football in front of you.
Yeah, last year they faced in week 0 as well. You're absolutely right. With 6 minutes to go, Stanford had the ball in Hawaii territory, up 20-17, throws an interception, and then Hawaii goes kicks a game-winning field goal with just under 2 minutes left. It was pretty close in that one. That was in Hawaii, though. This one, we get on the continental United States. It is interesting when you think about it. If you lean Stanford, though, would you pair Stanford and Virginia with like an alt spread of +3 for each?
I would not hate the read, but to me, especially what we talked about at the beginning of being cautious and just being very careful with the units, I would not be mad at the play. I completely understand the read, but sometimes I'm of the belief that if you're trying to force a bet, sometimes the best bet is a no bet. And for me, with how close I could see both sides or both outcomes, I would avoid it personally. But if you found a good enough odds for one of those alt spreads, I think it's a fine play for me.
And then before we move on to wrapping up, maybe a lotto sprinkled at the very end, we didn't discuss any player props. Do you kind of want to talk about your process behind that and maybe why you try to avoid them?
Well, for number one, in the state that I live in, they don't promote any of them, and I don't see any of the lines. And I also, even if I did, I would more than likely avoid them. Unlike the NFL and NBA, where player props are very much common, there is rules set in place for how transparent you have to be with injuries. Now, in the NBA, they're a lot more lax with it, but specifically in the NFL, you get a lot more transparency. For example, Texas A&M, Mike Elko is a coach that I know is very vague with injuries and when a player is coming back, because he can hold his cards to his chest and is allowed to do that outside of a mandatory injury report. They will wait to the very last minute to tell you these things. Why does this matter? Well, there's so many things that could be impacted by a specific injury. It could be a quarterback. A guy could be 80% and not get a ton of snaps, which leads to a ton of volatility with player props, to a point where, yes, there is guys that could be profitable with that, and I commend them for doing it, but I would rather focus on the complete team. And yes, injuries can impact that, but I feel like I have a little bit more control, even if I had access to it. I will say there is a world where I could look at maybe team passing yards. That's been a workaround for people that can't see it. But even with that in mind, I'm a guy that likes to play sides, totals, and I think that's where a ton of the value is for college football. Wiz, we've talked about it before. Unlike the NFL, the totals and the alt line specifically is a lot more lenient for college football than it is NFL.
Very much so. If you wanted to create your own stuff, you get a little bit more wiggle room here. Like, I don't think we'd be able to play TCU and UNLV like we are in the NFL. I feel like the difference between a -8 to the money line would be drastically different at times. So I'm completely with you on that. What can people expect from you then, from what types of bets you do cover? Because today we have a underdog spread bet, a under total, and we have a money line pair. Is that what we should be expecting all season?
Yeah, I think that's completely fair to expect. I am a belief that I love doing the heavy juice pairs, keeping them just as pairs. There will be times where if I like the underdog so much, we'll take the spread, and I'll even sprinkle in a little bit of the money line if I like that as well. And from time to time, we'll do some lottos. I'm not a huge parlay guy, but I understand you guys get boosts, and we do lottos all the time in the MLB and NBA, and they're fun things to sweat as long as you follow the units, of course. But that's something that we'll definitely do throughout the season. And one of the biggest things that I want to make sure that I'm really sharp on is getting the lines when they are the ones that I specifically want. For example, like we got the UNC TCU line at a great price, in my opinion. And I think as a lot of people get focused on CLV, college football, there's some really good prices that you can get. And every point matters. I've seen that online, and I think that's completely fair.
Well, let's help the D-Gens a little bit before we get into maybe like our favorite picks for the slate. We have 8 games on Saturday that I would say matter. I'm not going like FCS. Out of all the games we talked about, maybe the ones we didn't, which team has the best chance to upset?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think when looking at the slate, if you wanted to find a good plus money upset, I know I said I lean Virginia to cover, but in a world where you have a quarterback disadvantage like you do, I think NC State is completely fair. If you're one that wants to believe that CJ Bailey could go scorched earth mode, which I completely understand that perspective, that's completely fine with me. And then the same thing could be said for Hawaii. We talked about both sides, right? Stanford's not a very competitive team. I'm not going to be personally playing any of those underdogs, but there's been a lot of talk, especially within the college football betting community, on leaning towards those. And I completely understand their perspective. Listen, I'm always going to be one that tries to see both outcomes. And I think that there's complete validity in someone wanting to play those lines. I would not sprinkle Jacksonville State plus 225, even if we're playing the spread. I do think it's going to be close, but I'm not going to be one that's going to be putting any extra units. That one is definitely because of the line versus thinking a team is going to outright win.
Yeah, like if Hawaii, for example, had a plus 7, 7.5 spread, you'd be leaning Hawaii even though you like Stanford to win this game, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. You have something that you cooked up personally. Do you mind sharing that with
Mhm.
me?
Absolutely. As I know that these books will want you to play those the week zero slate, and I'm always going to say just be cautious. I did play personally a three-leg parlay on DraftKings. It is the under, like we talked about, 51 and a half for North Carolina TCU, over USC team total points, 47 and a half specifically. I'll let you catch up. I know I'm going
No, no,
quick.
no, no, no,
And
no. You're
then,
good. So we'll find an alt
yeah,
one there in a second. But you had the USC team total at, would you say, 47 and a half?
47 and a half. Very
Okay.
similar to what we talked about, where you have specific numbers. 47 and a half is one of those. And then Jacksonville State plus 10 and a half. With that being a very lower end parlay, there is a 50% boost for a lot of sports books, which got it to plus 419, 419. And I think that's a completely fair parlay. I'm not going to be stacking a ton of lines because, like we said, it's a very small slate. We don't know a ton, but these are all of the leans that I really, really liked at maybe some juiced odds. If you wanted to up it to USC 50 and the normal, what we talked about under, and then the other one for Jacksonville State, I think that's completely fine. But I like taking some of those leans at more juiced odds, especially if I'm baking them into a parlay. They were profitable last night for FCS, and I think it's a good system to play as well.
So what I'm testing out right now, just to, you can add the profit boost for just
Absolutely.
USC at 47 and a half, North Carolina TCU under 51 and a half, and Jacksonville State plus 10 and a half. I added two. I added TCU money line, and then I did the alt spread for UNLV at plus 3.5.
Mhm.
And even before the boost, you're getting plus 478. And then
I
if
think
you
that's
had
completely fair.
yeah, and if you had a 50% boost, you're going to get plus 800 for that as well. This is what I'm probably going to play as if I get a if I think Novig's giving me a boost for college football. I really like this, and I think you did good work, man. First show, you didn't have any jitters. You powered through. Um, well, I guess we'll talk more about like season predictions next week as we get into the bigger slate. But what is the number one thing that you're just watching for this week?
Yeah, the number one thing I'm watching for is the trenches. Especially with the more competitive games, I want to see the cohesion of the offensive and defensive lines. What we've seen in the transfer portal era is every coach has talked about offensive line and defensive line depth and the challenge it's been to be able to get high level versions of that. We saw with Indiana last year, they had the best trenches in the country. They go 16-0 and win the whole thing. So I am very much watching for that. And then I always go back and rewatch the games for a second time to see if I see any angles that I missed the first go round. Because I think a lot of college football, you can find a ton of edges for just watching the games back again. And I will say for the weeks to come, there will be some anti or fading TCU and UNC because we've seen time and time again the players that have to travel back to Dublin, Ireland. Both of those teams really struggle to get the drum back going. Coaches have complained for it. So ever since the existence of that Ireland game, we saw Kansas State, I believe, lose to a naval school because of their return from Ireland. So keep an eye out for that because I'm definitely having a watch out for that for next week.
Yeah, it sucks that the transfer portal is finally getting figured out because I was really looking forward to Shadur Sanders transferring from Cleveland to Colorado at some point when he doesn't get the starting job. That was nuts how that all went down. That you can be drafted by an NFL team and then just decide, oh, I'm going to make more money in college football. I'm glad they got that all figured out.
Yeah, I'm happy they figured that out. I'm hoping it's just a one-time thing because it was for just the class of 2022 who like I blame the NCAA a lot for that because of how late they made that legal decision. But yeah, we would be here for an hour if we started talking about the portal and my thoughts on that.
Blaming the NCAA for something, I don't think I've never heard that take before. They're perfect in every way. That's so. Well, but we'll save that for
They've never
next
made a
week.
mistake.
Yeah, we'll save that for next week. Tegan, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to be talking to you every week. And I'm excited to have you on for college football this season. And I know everyone in the Wiz Court appreciates you a ton.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. I'm excited for this season.
Hey, the 25-0 streak starts now. It starts today.
Come on.
Well, for Tegan Randolph, I am Logan Windsor, otherwise known as WizBets. We will be back next week for the Week 1 slate. Way more to talk about in that one. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment down below. Let us know if you're hyped. I will be including a discount code if you want our full college football slates every single week. Use code Tegan, get 33% off all packages. Support Tegan, support the show, and support all of us. But let's have a profitable Saturday, and let's dominate college football this season. I'll catch y'all later. Have a good one, guys.